www.outreachjudaism.org. That's where you're going to find all the juicy stuff covering all of the issues of the New Testament versus the prophets in the Old Testament. They're full of Tanakh. If you got volume 1, if you've got the original one, you need to give that away to somebody. Pick up volume 1 and 2. Grab the CDs to go with it. Or Rabbi said you can just listen to them online if you can't purchase them. But you definitely do want to listen to these audio portions to go with this, because they do go hand in hand, and it'll make your absorption of this book so much easier. And so and along with that, there's other things there. There's the debate that he's got, the Book of Chronicles, fascinating facts of the Book of Chronicles. Even he's got some of the disputation copies there you can get from his website if you like. So be sure to tune in every week. If this is your first time, Rabbi Singer's all over the place. He's got Tovia Singer. Is it toviasinger.tv, Rabbi? Is that how that is?
No, it's just toviasinger.tv.
Okay, and so that's all you can eat buffet if you want to look at it that way. So hey, Rabbi, were you able to pull up that email yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, if you're willing to do that, that would be great. I'm going to put up a letter here in a minute. Let's go ahead and roll into it's coming up on the hour right now, so it might be a good time to go ahead and hit the hot topic for the day. We did cover this before in pretty good detail, but it kind of got mixed into the middle of a broadcast, and just like this one is, but at least this one the attention is drawn. There's a lot of curious people who actually wanted to hear this answer, who haven't heard it before. So, Rabbi, you got some fresh ears out here who've not heard a response upon this, upon all the claims about Rabbi Kaduri. So supposedly he was 100 plus years old, and he had a letter. And in this letter, the letter said, "Don't open until after I'm dead," or whatever the case may be. And when they opened the letter up, it supposedly proclaimed that Yeshua was indeed the Messiah. And, Rabbi, the very first thing that comes to my mind on this whole thing, one of the things that I've always been taught in the Christian church is where Jesus says, "If you are ashamed of me, then I will be ashamed of you before my Father in heaven." So if he really found out that Yeshua was the Messiah, him not telling anybody pretty much got him condemned. I mean, according to that concept, because he says, if you are ashamed of me, then I'll be ashamed of you before my Father who's in heaven. That's kind of the New Testament reference. So the whole thing reeks of falsehood to begin with. Rabbi, I'm going to turn this over to you. I'm going to put up a picture of this letter, and when you open it, I sent you all 3 of them. I've only got 2 of them that I'm going to show. One of them actually has like highlighted red marks. I'm going to pull it up now. Highlighted red marks along the letter. On certain things and I don't know if, whose side that's on, but they're there nonetheless. And the other one is a larger square document with Hebrew writing at the bottom. So I'm not sure which one you can grab a hold of first, but I sent that to you just so you can kind of look at it as you're talking. And if you see something that jumps off the page, or looks like it's upside down. No. That's funny. One of the letters actually looks like it's upside down. Anyway, okay, Rabbi, so I'm going to let this go with you now and let you kind of let everybody know. And also, hey, as you're going, the other guy who's got the video, the guy with the long beard, and the very first thing he's talking about is how you've got to shave your eyebrows. I don't know. It was all kinds of stuff that he was saying that you had to do. He found out that using Isaiah 53 that Jesus was the Messiah too. You mentioned about that too, and I really would like for you to include that in your talk today on this topic.
I want to, first of all, for the missionaries who are watching this show, for Christians who are interested in converting Jews to Christianity, I want to give you some really good advice. And that is, if you want to convert Jews to Christianity, there really is one thing you need to do that's really fairly simple. And I think it would have a very big impact on me. I know it would have a very big impact on William Hall, the host of this show, and it would have a very big impact on thousands of Jews worldwide. And that is, if you open the Jewish scriptures, Tanakh, which is a large corpus of sacred literature, more than 23,000 verses, so you have a lot of areas to work in, and you can find passages like you would find in the book of John. So if you have John 17:3, if you can find that in the book of Deuteronomy, I guarantee you all the Jews will convert to Christianity. believe in Jesus. And please do not send me an email saying that I'm not a Christian, I'm Messianic. You're dealing with me now. I don't want to get that. The Messianic movement is a sect of the Protestant community, but I don't want to get into that, okay? But I can assure you of this. I encourage any missionary watching this, just take your Christian Bible and just flip it open and just put your finger anywhere. Just pick a verse somewhere, John 14, verse 6. I am the way, the truth, and life. No one can come to the Father but by me. If you can find that in the book of Joshua, if you can find the Nicene Creed somewhere in the book of Exodus, all the Jews are going to believe in Jesus, because that's really all we're interested in, is what the Jewish Scripture is saying. And what we're doing is we're encountering everything but Scripture from you. We're getting all this white noise rather than a very clear, simple text. I mean, if everything comes down to if you believe in Jesus, you're saved, and if you don't believe in him, you're going to hell, then that kind of statement, which we would find in the end of the book of Mark, if that statement could be found in Jeremiah, I guarantee you, all the Jews, you're wasting millions of dollars out there with Rabbi Kaduri's letters and making these videos. I'm going to tell you what to do. Just find a text, a clear text that says, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that anyone who believe in him would not perish but have everlasting life. John 3:16. If you can find that in the book of Micah, we'll all accept Jesus as the Messiah. I mean, that's all we're looking for. So, when you go to Las Vegas and you watch a magic show and the magician is doing all this kind of deflecting your attention to produce magic tricks, they're able to do that by just deflecting. We're not interested in that. We're interested in just the Bible. So let me just save you a lot of time. All you need to do is find a passage in the Jewish Scriptures that says what you find in the Christian Bible. Okay, that's it. If you do that, if you're successful, like if you ask me why don't Jews eat pork, well, I would point you to Leviticus 11, which says don't eat pork. Paraphrasing. Why do we keep Shabbos? It just says keep Shabbos forever. That's why we do it. It says it in the Jewish Bible. If you can't find any passage in the Jewish Bible that clearly says God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, if you can't find the Nicene Creed, the formula of the doctrine of the Trinity that was hammered out in the 4th century under Constantine, if you can't find that in the Jewish Bible, we want nothing to do with it. It's not that we hate Jesus. It's not that we hate Christianity. We're not crazy about Christianity because they didn't behave well. So it's like Christianity didn't do very well in terms of the way it behaved. But let's set that aside. That's all you need to do. You don't need to do like pulling a bird out of your underwear. You don't need to do all these little tricks. We're really not looking for this kind of nonsense. We really would like, if you want to make a case, just have a clear text in the Jewish Bible that clearly says that God loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, so that anyone who believes would have everlasting life and not perish. All the Jews will accept Jesus. The reason why we don't accept Jesus, the reason why we don't accept Hare Krishna, the reason why we don't accept the Hindu monkey god called Hanuman, which is very popular in Bali, very popular, is it's not found anywhere in the Jewish Scriptures. Now, these folks in Bali, sweet people, but they worship idols. They're doing miracles in the name of the monkey god. Okay, miracles all over the place. Okay, we don't care. We don't care about the miracles in the name of the monkey god. It's just not relevant to us. They may really be doing those miracles. I haven't seen them, but I heard a lot about it, and it's not relevant to us. I don't care if a Hindu can resurrect the dead. It would not change what I believe, because idolatry, false religions can produce miracles, and the Torah bears testimony to this. And Deuteronomy 13 warns us that false religions can produce supernatural experiences. It doesn't interest us. So I would say this to the leaders of Jews for Jesus. You're spending, I don't know what, $30 million a year, just you alone, okay? Don't bother. Just find a passage from the book of Mark, Matthew, Luke, John. Don't give us Isaiah 53, because we, the Jews who are studying Isaiah, are reading it in context. We're not reading it out of context. And as I said, there's this one guy who gives his whole testimony from, I guess it's Chosen People Ministries, I think it is. And he says, if you just read Isaiah 53 and nothing else, you would say it's talking about Jesus. Well, of course, that's exactly what they need to say. They have to say, read Isaiah 53 and nothing else. But as it turns out, Isaiah did intend that you read the chapters that introduce this chapter. And if I take any passage out of context, I can show you that Jesus is the Messiah. For example, I can take Zechariah chapter 13, verse 6. There are missionaries who use this. The passage says you can open up your King James Bible, and it says in the text says, they will say to him, "What are those wounds between your hands?" It says that. And he will answer, "Those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends." There are missionaries who actually use that to show that the crucifixion was foretold in the book of Zechariah. Well, Zechariah 13 verse 6 does say that. What are these wounds between your hands? It does say that. But the context, Zechariah hoped, and I can speak to Zechariah in this, that you have read Zechariah 13, verse 1 through 5, that you've read the verses that introduce it. And therefore, if you read it in context, that's Zechariah 13, verse 6, you will discover that the person who's speaking is a false prophet who will admit his sin, that he had spoken falsely and presumptuously in the name of the Lord, and that he claimed to be a prophet but will really be a false prophet. That's how important a context is. So now let's move on. When missionaries appeal to a supposed letter by Rabbi Kaduri and say, well, this proves that Jesus is the Messiah, what you're advertising, and I'm going to look at this thing in just a moment, but what you're saying is, we don't have anything in the Bible that says that Jesus is the Messiah. That's what you're really doing. The message you're sending out to the Jewish people when you come up with a supposed letter written by one of the greatest rabbis, Kabbalists of the last century. He passed away in the year 2006. I knew him. I was not his disciple, but I studied his teachings. He was a fierce opponent of Christianity. To say that he believed in Jesus, if you make that claim, that's like claiming that Elie Wiesel is a Holocaust denier. If you make the claim that Yasser Arafat was really the chief rabbi of Israel, you're just so outside, you have just become irrelevant. So I encourage, because I'm not making this up, the claim of Chosen People Ministries, of Jews for Jesus, of Friends of Israel Gospel Ministries is that you can look at your Bible and it can be demonstrated from the Jewish scriptures that Jesus is the Messiah. And then what happened is we then look at the Jewish Bible and guess what? It isn't there. We don't have anything that resembles what we find in the Gospels. It's very, very different. So what you've done is you basically are saying to us, we have given up. We've surrendered. We really don't have a passage in the Jewish Bible. Isaiah 7:14 isn't talking about the Messiah being born to a virgin. So therefore, we have to now make up these letters from a rabbi. Even though you claim that you don't follow rabbis, the Messianic movement is very adamant that they don't follow the words of rabbis. They follow the word of God. If you're a Messianic Jew or have ever been in a Messianic congregation, you know I'm telling you the truth. You've heard this over and over again. We are biblical Jews. We're not rabbinic Jews. Well, what do they then do? They turn around and say, we could prove Jesus the Messiah from a letter written by Rabbi Kaduri. Now, I'm just looking here at the letter that you've emailed me here during the show, and I've looked into this letter. I've asked every family member I can get my hands on, is there any letter like this? And no one knows anything about it. None of his disciples, none of the people who were very close to Rabbi Kaduri, knows anything about it. So this is like out of nowhere this letter exists. The other point I think should be said is that I think that when you watch these videos about Rabbi Kaduri's letter, they make it sound like the letter says that like Jesus is the Messiah. Well, I'm just going to read it here. It's sort of written in a script that's not, scribbled, but it says, Yorim ha'om v'yochia shedibru v'tayrasai omdim, which would mean, Yorim ha'om, which means the nation will be raised up, v'yechiach, and it will become known, it will be affirmed, that his word and his Torah stands. So there it is. I'm just reading a few. Now, I didn't say anything about Jesus being the Messiah in there. If you did, you're living in an alternative universe.
Is the name Yeshua even in there?
No. So what I'm looking here is that you have the first letter of each which means the first letter of each word spells Yehoshua, which would be the name of Moses' disciple. So, by the way, there's an article on our site where I show that the Reverend Sung Young Moon, his name is all over Isaiah 53. I've got Moon and Hare Krishna all over Zechariah chapter 12. I mean, I can find you Krishna. If you want Hanuman, I will send you verses all over the Bible. I'm not going to go to some letter written by someone who is in the Obama administration. I could find it in Scripture. Moon is all over the place with acronyms. It's there in nice sequences. I can produce it from today's New York Times if you want it. I mean, you give me today's New York Times, I will find the flying spaghetti monster for you. Okay? I mean, if that's the best you can do. So as it turns out, I just went to a whole range of folks who've been studying under Rabbi Kaduri, and Rabbi Kaduri, it should be emphasized, lived to somewhere around, it's not exact, he was born in Baghdad, so when he passed away, he could be 106, 110 years old, but that means, what is very important that he lived so long, is that people have been around him for a century. People have been around him forever. So therefore, it's not like he passed away when he was very young, like Ramoshe Chaim Luzzatto, who passed away in his 30s. This is a man who's, had a huge following. He was perhaps the greatest Kabbalist in the land of Israel. So this would be all over the place. As it turns out, this is a forgery. As a Jew, I'm looking at this, and this is very telling, because what you're saying, when missionaries are offering a letter by Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, and I'm not going to get into the point that no one knows where this letter came from. By every account of people who would know, this is a forgery. No one ever heard about such a letter that no one was supposed to open until a year after he passed away. No one's aware of this. But if this is what missionaries have to do, what I think is very important is they're advertising that we don't have anything in the Bible. We need to use these kinds of letters to convince you that Jesus is the Messiah. And let me just pose it this way: to make the point, if it's said in the book of Amos, if it's said in the book of Leviticus, that God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, so that anyone who would believe in Him would not perish but have everlasting life. Let's say it said that in Leviticus chapter 70. There is no chapter 70, so let's just say it said that, okay? I want you to walk through this with me. Would they be pointing to Rabbi Kaduri's letter? Think about that. William, I want to ask you this question. You have probably lost friends because you've embraced the Jewish faith and left Christianity, right? You've paid a price for that, right? That was not free. It would have been a lot more convenient for you, William, if you had just stayed in the church or stayed in the Messianic movement. Your relationship with many friends, perhaps failed, I don't know this, would have not been injured, and you paid a very heavy price for doing what you knew to be right. Right now, I know you did this. You paid that enormous social cost because you had to follow the truth. If there was a verse in the book of Numbers that said, if you believe in Jesus, you'll be saved, and if you don't believe in him, you'll be damned, Mark chapter 16, verse 20, you would have never left the church. You would have stayed a Christian. Am I right or wrong?
That's correct. That's correct.
Of course you would have. If we would find the Carmen Christ of Philippians 2, if you can find that in the book of Judges, the hundreds and hundreds, thousands of Messianics and Christians who are leaving in droves from the church, they wouldn't be leaving. They'd be staying. And I'd be a Christian. If you had the doctrine of the Trinity, the Nicene Creed, in the Torah, we'd all believe in Jesus. We just want to see it in the Bible. So the Kaduri letter, the fact that the missionaries need to appeal to this letter, I want to set aside that the letter doesn't say Jesus is the Messiah, doesn't say anything. You do the acronym, and I will find you moon in Isaiah 53. But setting that aside, the reason they have to do these things, they got to do these magic tricks and pull like little foam balls out of people's ears, is because they don't have a text. If there was a text, they wouldn't need Rabbi Kaduri's letter. It would be unnecessary. The reason they need to find the letter that's supposedly Rabbi Kaduri, and then, when you watch these videos, it says, and the letter proclaims that Jesus is the Messiah. Well, even if I were to say that this letter is authentic, there's nothing that says that Jesus is the Messiah. It doesn't say that here, so that's nonsense as well. But again, Chosen People Ministries, all you need to do is find a passage. That means, this is all you do. Open your book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, anything you want. Pick any verse, blind, and you find that verse in the book of Joshua, that's about Jesus, we'll go with it. If you find a text that has been plagiarized from the Jewish scriptures, like from the book of Mark, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and might, they just took that from our Bible, and so did Islam took stuff, but there's nothing there about Jesus. Find something about Jesus, and you've got thousands of Jews who are going to accept it. But we only use the Bible. We don't do this. I'm going to make this last point. This practice of forgery in order to get people to believe in Jesus or to advance a Christian doctrine is as old as the church itself. There are books like the Epistle of Barnabas. You have the Gospel of Peter, Gospel of Thomas. These are all forgeries. These are all done by Christians who knew they were lying. They knew that Paul didn't write the Gospel of Paul. They knew it. They wrote it anyway because the ends justify the means. And this is a practice the church has been engaged in for 2,000 years. And they do it to their own Bible. They insert the doctrine of the Trinity into the first epistle of John, an anonymous document, but they put it in there. They admit they put it in there. The whole story of the adulterous woman in John 7 and 8, that's a later interpolation. They know it is. It's in your Christian commentary. So if Christian scribes were perfectly willing and able to manipulate their own Bible and the Jewish Bible, which they considered sacred, what do you think they'll do to Rabbi Kaduri? I mean, they'll dance on his grave. What do you think they would do to... Of course they'll do this kind of stuff. This is an ancient practice of the church.
אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו